spent the last 40 years advocating for ecosystems on Whidbey and Camano Islands in Washington state and beyond. Through decades of consistent activism, she and her partner, Steve Erickson, have learned how to make positive change in the world by engaging in the legislative system at a local level. In this episode of Action Hour, Marianne shares with us what she has learned and what steps you can take to get involved and use your voice to effectively advocate for environmental issues in your township, county, and beyond. As far as it pertains to this activism framework, Marianne, in earlier episodes, we talked about how you became an environmental activist and your roots in the anti-war movement during Vietnam. But I'm curious, when did the making positive change framework of activism emerge for you? Because it's pretty specific and it has very clear steps to it. And, you know, your activism has been, you've used a lot of different tactics and a lot of different strategies, I think, over the years. And so I'm curious how this one kind of came about.
Well, it's all your fault, actually, because for all these years, it's sort of built up. I mean, each issue is different. There are certain basics that you need. And it was sort of in my head when somebody phones and they're freaking out, you know, the classic, there's a bulldozer in my backyard. Mm-hmm. I sort of knew, okay, you know, where are you? What's happening? Who's doing it? Those basic questions, but I never formulated it into any consistent document. Mm-hmm. And you pushed me to do that. And we did it together. And thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I didn't realize that it was. Yeah. Well, you know, I guess that's the thing about sharing knowledge and being a knowledge holder, right? Is that like you just learn how to do a thing. And unless you're asked to kind of put it in a standard operating procedure document of some kind, you're just going to continue to do it. And you have your own processes and you have your own way of doing it and putting it out on paper and like really making it a clear outline. I know for me, it's been extremely helpful in terms of, you know, you sharing your knowledge with me and our ability to share that knowledge with our community. And so I'm really glad that we're getting to do podcast episodes about it. And for anybody who's listening, we have educational resources on our website. There are 2 documents that Marianne and I worked on. The one that we're going to talk about right now is called Making Positive Change, which is a high-level overview of how to engage in activism around a particular issue or problem that you've identified. And so this one has about 7 steps to it. And it you know, basically takes somebody through defining the problem that you want to tackle through the process of figuring out who you need to contact, how you need to do your homework, where you need to show up, how to make yourself heard, how to measure success, whether or not you've done the thing that you showed up and wanted to do, and then how to continue to show up so that whatever the issue is doesn't fall off your radar. And I feel like the reason why I wanted to do this with you today and right now is because I think a lot of people are asking themselves what they can do around a variety of issues right now that are arising on the national scale. Even just, you know, one of our community members, Karen, came and visited our office the other day, and she was, you know, she wasn't sure what to do. She was feeling very overwhelmed by the current political landscape and all of the things that are going on. And I think a framework like this can maybe ground some people. And so you pick a focus, pick a direction, and then actually tackle it instead of feeling despair, you know?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, and part of the problem is that, yeah, there are so many issues at so many levels.
Yes.
That, you know, yes, you do have to focus and one of the classics, we were at a planning commission meeting. This has been years and years ago. And we're discussing issues and, arguing with planning commission members. And at the end of the meeting, one of the planning commissioners came to us and said, "But what are you doing about wolves in Alaska?"
Really?
Yeah. Yes, wolves in Alaska need protection. I agree. But right now we are talking about planning in Island County. Mm-hmm. Could we please focus on the issue that's happening today? Mm-hmm. It's really, really easy to get sidetracked. The but what abouts.
Yes.
Focus on your issue and deal with that issue.
I think that step even may pre-step number one, or it is part of step number one, which we've defined step number one as define the problem. Yes. And so, understand the issue you're addressing, ask questions. Where does the problem begin? What's the root of the problem? Why is it a problem? And so I think to your point about that, it's defining the problem also includes defining the scope, right? What's the scope of work? Yeah. And yes. Also ranking, right? What can I prioritize today? What is the most urgent? What is the most time sensitive thing? And also what is actually available to me? Because I would say wolves in Alaska, I don't feel like I have enough to latch onto to tackle an issue like that. However, I do feel like I have enough within my worldview and in my community and my focus to do something like a ICE response training, which I'm going to do tomorrow, through the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, because in our community we have ICE active. And so, I was like, well, what can I do? I can learn how to respond to this for my neighbors, I've
been asking the question and you're way ahead of me. Thank you. And I want to hear when you're done with that, let's bring it home.
To go back to kind of our steps, we have define the problem, understand the issue you're addressing, ask questions. Where does the problem begin? What is the root of the problem? Why is it a problem? So for this particular circumstance, if we're just using the fact that ICE agents are in our community and are picking up residents of Island County, where does the problem begin? What's the root of the problem? Why is it a problem? It's, I think the problem begins on a federal level. And it begins, I don't know. I don't think we want to use ICE as the basis for going through this, but I do think we want to, but I'm glad we addressed it. And I think maybe now we can use an environmental issue that we can go through each step with, that people can we can think of it either something you've worked through in the past or something that's hypothetical that we can all latch onto to kind of go through these steps. So when we're talking about step one, define the problem, understand the issue you're addressing. What is the problem? Why is it a problem? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Oh, yeah. Let's take one that's a big issue right now, which is all those illegal bulkheads all around our shoreline, and the fact that the sea level is rising, and eventually it's going to overtop all those illegal bulkheads, and those houses are going to get swamped anyway.
This is a very good one. Yes, I think this has a lot of meat to it, and I think we'll be able to go through these these steps with this one, and it maybe help us define it. But okay, yeah. Where does the problem begin? What's the root of the problem? Why is it a problem? So, you did address why it's a problem, right? Is we have sea level rise and we have armored shorelines and they're not going to actually defend these homes. And the root of the problem is pretty complex in this case, right? Where the problem begins is pretty complex in this case, because the problem begins with people developing on the shoreline in the first place. And as we talked about in previous episodes on our island, part of that problem is the fact that they blasted the bluffs to create beaches that were below sea level in the first place, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a problem in a fundamental design problem to start with.
And it's one of the problems that I deal with a lot is that, this didn't start yesterday. This is a historic pattern. Mm-hmm. And at some point, it's something the Growth Management Hearings Board, in our early cases, they used to say it all the time, that the county people would go up there and say, but this is how we've always done it. Mm-hmm. And the presiding officer would say, but that's the point of the Growth Management Act. We can't do that anymore. We have to change. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions becomes, as of when? Do we blast it? Do we shut the door today, yesterday, mm-hmm. tomorrow, next mm-hmm. week? Mm-hmm. As of when do we make change happen? Do we change the pattern that's happened all these years?
Well, that's a really good question. And I think that determining when is, I guess, part of this step one still, because, breaking down a problem, most problems have many parts, tease those apart. This one's very complicated because, as you said, we have, there are multiple interests at work here, right? There are shoreline ecosystems. There's the process of shoreline erosion. There is private land ownership. There is the equity attached to that private land ownership under capitalism. And there is our local legislative system and our local government system that has a vested interest in the tax base of people who live on the shores.
Actually, there's the other interest is all the rest of us taxpayers who yes. do not live on the shoreline and essentially are being asked to underwrite the continued existence of those nice houses on the shore.
Well, yes. And that is a fact it's coming to the front because of sea level rise, because of climate change, because of the rate yes. at which erosion is occurring and flooding is happening, and the likelihood of those properties not being viable, and the process that may or may not happen in the event that somebody abandons their home, becomes the problem of the public. And so, I know Steve has talked about this before, and you guys have talked about this before, and is that, derelict structures, who's responsible for the derelict structures once the high tide mark, once the high tide mark has superseded whatever these properties are.
Yeah, no, we had one case, a fascinating one. A former county commissioner, Dick Caldwell, trying to remember the name of the development. It's just north of Green Bank on the west side. And it's an area that I had not seen or heard this before. But the tides are such that they suck the sand out from under the beach.
Oh,
and
my
here's
gosh.
this whole road was on the beach, and one after another they caved in, and people, it's like at some point it's not a livable space anymore. Mm-hmm. And the road down there, Ledgewood Beach, that's the place. Anyway, the road was just god awful, and Island County was spending enormous amounts of money maintaining that road. And eventually, Dick and Joan Caldwell were the only people living on that beach and demanding that Island County repair the road time and time and time again so that they could get to their house, which, next week, next month, it was going to go to. It was the last one. And yeah, I made a lot of noise about it, but how do you make that decision? What rights did the Caldwells have that we Island County taxpayers should maintain that road to their one house that was washing away?
Well, this goes into, thinking about something like that, like a very specific example like that, in that moment, picking the focus, figuring out what part of the issue is most important to you, and choosing a direction, decide where you can make the biggest impact. I think part of what feels important to you about this issue, and I agree, is the public responsibility and the public burden that these situations have created. And in that circumstance, choosing a direction, it's like, where can you make the biggest impact? It's like, okay, well, can we create clear guidelines for when the county stops investing in infrastructure that doesn't benefit the public good?
Yeah, there are many of these situations. Down here, Glendale Road, Glendale and Holst, when that blew out, the public works director looked at it and said, okay, end of that, find your way around.
If we're going back though to like our framework for this, and we're going to use bulkheads as our kind of our issue or problem that we're tackling. We've kind of defined the problem a little bit. And step 2 in our framework is understanding the system. So, and you kind of started talking about the county commissioners and the planning commission. And I think that for us on a local level, that's where a lot of our work lies, but it's not where all of our work lies. And it's not where all issues or all problems will be best addressed. And so in this step, we ask people to know who is the decision maker for your particular issue. And yeah. And so we outline the 3 distinct branches of the U.S. government, at least as they have been defined up until this point: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. And so, each has their own varying degrees of impact, influence, and power over different issues. And so, we work very often on the legislative level through city councils and county commissioners, and also our state legislature, right? Like that is our kind of wheelhouse in terms of, I guess I would say, proactive activism before filing any kind of lawsuit.
The first step is, what are the rules of this particular game? Yeah. And indeed, in this instance, we have the Shoreline Management Act at the state level, and that mandates that we have a shoreline master program at the county level, and that is administered by the Public Works Department and the Public Health Department. So there you have, you have the legislative at the state level and at the county level, and you have the executive departments which carry out the mandate of the legislative department.
Right, which we're going to include. We're including county departments under executive level, and also our county commissioners who kind of sit both in the legislative and executive branches, right? Well,
and they are, at the county level, unfortunately, you go back to 1889 when Washington became a state, and the people doing the work at that point put together a pro forma, take it off the shelf county organization. Here's how we're going to do this. And a number of counties have, they're called charter counties. They've written their own charters. Thank you. Island County never quite got around to it. So we're still using that 1889 ancient format, which does in fact kind of conglomerate together the legislative and the executive branches in the county commissioners.
Yes, which gives them unique power.
Unfortunately, yeah. Now, I have to say that they have been trying to move away from that by having an administrative executive person at the county level. And I haven't been dealing with them closely enough to know what that administrator is doing. But theoretically, it is so that the commissioners back off of the executive and stay in the legislative.
Yeah, which is interesting. And that's like potentially a good buffer are good checks and balances for that if that administrator is given executive authority.
Presumably that was the job description.
I'm curious about that. I'm curious about the functionality of that. I'm curious about, how the actual operations around it, because, I think that it's a very good thing. And I also think that if our county has been operating a certain way for over 100 years, like 150 years, that, it also takes time to implement new processes and policies like that.
Oh, absolutely. The thing is, it hasn't been totally frozen in 1889. It's been evolving, but what that evolution looks like is an interesting question.
Yeah. So we have the legislative branch of government, key players, Congress, legislature, our county commissioners, city councils. That legislative body makes the rules. We have the executive branch of government, which is like, the office of the president, our governors, also our county commissioners, and a mayor or city manager at the municipality level. And the executive body carries out the rules made by the legislative body. That's how we defined it. And then we have the third branch of government, which is the judicial branch, which key players here are Supreme Court, federal courts of appeal, federal district courts, state Supreme Court, state court of appeal, county superior courts, municipal courts, and courts adjudicate the rules and how they are carried out. That's how we have it kind of defined.
Yes.
Anything you want to add to this branch of government?
Basically, if you can avoid it, you do. Going to court is a big deal, and generally there's a whole lot of money involved and a whole lot of ill will. So if a matter can be resolved without going to court, you're better off. I will point out that the State Growth Management Hearings Board, where we've been a million times or so, was created so that theoretically JQ Public could appeal actions by their city or county without being a lawyer and without going to the expense and pain of lawyering up and going to court. What we discovered is Steve is one of the very few members of JQ Public who is able to do that.
Well, he's really JQ Public JD, right? He has his JQ Public Esquire, I would say.
The point being that not a whole lot of people have the interest or the time or the brains to learn the law at the depth that Steve has, so that even the hearings board, which was designed to make it accessible to JQ Public, over time has become not accessible.
When it first was implemented, though, was it more accessible? Has it become less accessible over time?
Yes, it has.
Yes, it has. Okay. What about it has made it less accessible?
Basically, more nitpickeriness and more people hiring lawyers to do the work rather than going in themselves. And that the hearings board, the rules got more and more nitpickery. We actually got thrown out at one case because we emailed our petition for review instead of faxing it. Okay. In one case, I love this one. Previous Island County prosecutor Dave Jameson, he lost it because he was basing his entire case on the placement of a comma and how you had to read that particular sentence based on the placement of that comma. One of the members of the hearings board at that point was a professor of English. And I have a great deal of background and expertise in the English language.
Oh, you absolutely do. For anyone listening, Marianne has in real time corrected my grammatical mistakes while I'm typing.
Sorry.
I'm not mad at it. It's just like having a human fact checker or proofreader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The point being that I was able to read Dave Jameson's arguments and frame the argument around that, the placement of that comma and how you would interpret that sentence based on that. Mm-hmm. And then Steve, my, English teacher grammar argument, and put it into legal language. And, when you've got a hearings board member who's a professor of English, that was fun.
I'm guessing you prevailed in that one.
We did.
Yes. But
that
to
made
your
up
point. Oh, yeah. But to your point, though, that's time, effort, expertise. It's, knowledge, and it's it takes an incredible amount of dedication of time and resources and education in order to get to a point where you're having that argument in the first place. And
exactly.
Yeah. So in this kind of step 2, we're talking about the different systems of government and the different mechanisms. And I'm really glad that you brought up access, because it is that aspect, I think, of this process is more or less accessible to people based on their resources and who they are in a community. And
yes.
Do you have a lot of money? Might be easier for you to engage in this process. Are you, highly educated? Do you have what do you have available to you? And if you don't have those things, are there resources in your community to help you? Like, this isn't related to environmental law, but in Bellevue, they have the ELAP, which is the East Side Legal. What is it? Let me ELAP.
There are
East Side Legal Assistance Program, which is for people who can't, they don't have the means, and they need representation. There are resources out there for people to gain that knowledge, but with the acknowledgement that you do need that support often when you're dealing with. Yeah.
And there are public interest law firms, and, and there is actually a requirement by the Bar Institute. The bar in most states, and in Washington, it's true, that every attorney do a certain amount of pro bono work. Mm-hmm. And we have had the benefit of some of that pro bono work. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, we have also paid through the nose for attorneys, because you got to do what you got to do.
Right.
Now, because of who we are and what we do, we've generally gotten the, good friends and longtime client rate. Mm-hmm. But current rates are, I think you're lucky if you can get $300 an hour. Mm-hmm. $600 and $700 is more typical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That makes it nervous making, mm-hmm. I don't have that kind of money. Not a lot of people do.
No. And so, I do think that is just like, I'm glad we're just calling out the monetary resources it takes to kind of actually dive into and make a difference around these issues, that like raising a legal defense fund might be a part of your activist homework if you're really tackling something. And hopefully you have a group of people who are also interested in the same issue that can support that, because our system is set up for litigation, unfortunately. Right. Like if nothing else works, right. Like we like to start at policy first, right. Like can you, but then there are all kinds of ways in which, even if you get a policy passed, it may not be enforced. There may be inconsistencies, from state legislature all the way down through county, as right. Like you guys have litigated based on inconsistencies between county policy and zoning ordinances and state law. It's yeah. So it gets complicated pretty fast, which gets us to number 3, which is do your homework.
The thing is that, do your homework. That's easy to say. You have to recognize, what is the homework that you need to do?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's a big thing. And I partly understand the system, but once you have a sense of how this system is working, what things do you need to do to make a difference? What is the action you can take? And again, there's all those hearings and all those meetings, and yes, all those deadlines, the notices.
Yeah.
But, learning about the homework. I mean, it's easy to say, go do your homework. What is your homework?
Well, it depends. Depends on who you are and where you're coming from, right? Because I think identity, your unique perspective and identity is going to kind of influence what your homework is. Like if we're thinking about these bulkheads and we're thinking about the impact, are you a concerned community member who is worried about your taxpayer dollars at work? Or are you a neighbor of somebody who put in a bulkhead and now all of a sudden your property is flooded because the water has moved elsewhere, right? Like who you are in the conversation is going to change what your opinion is and what your position is, right? In terms of an issue.
But underlying all of that is the framework of, okay, doing your homework. What are the rules around your particular issue? In this case, you discover that there is a shoreline master program. You discover that there is a Shoreline Management Act. Mm-hmm. You discover perhaps in the case of Island County that we've just been through the Shoreline Master Program revision, review, and update. Mm-hmm. And it is currently, as far as I know, I don't know if it's in the Department of Ecology or the Department of Commerce. I think
the Shoreline Management Act. It's the Department of Ecology. Yeah.
It is Ecology that does the 60-day review and approval of that document.
In terms of the complication of things, the Shoreline Management Act is now a part of the GMA, but the GMA is administered by the Department of Commerce and the Shoreline Management Act is administered by the Department of Ecology. And I'm curious, do they talk to each other? What's their relationship? Well. Yeah. Yeah. So there's, there are all these departments too that have their own their own rules, their own ways of operating, their own, hierarchy structures, their own public notice processes, right? Because as you said, and public notices, as a part of doing your homework, what we have in our document is, some resources to consider in the research process is legal notices in the newspaper, legal notices on agency websites. And then, but I think we're also talking about corresponding legislation, legislation that corresponds to your issue. What are the zoning regulations in your county? What is the, depending on what the thing is that you're looking at, but it could be anything. Even if you were talking about invasive species, what's the state legislation on this? What's the county, code on this? Yeah. And then from our point of view, or something that I think we need to consider, and it's also written into the Growth Management Act, is what's the best available science on this particular
topic. That's the bottom line. That unfortunately, best available science is the requirement for it is somewhat limited. I'm always saying, but you have to do best available science, and Steve says, well, not in this instance. But nevertheless, yes, you research the best available science and you present the best available science, and you basically put the agency or the organization on the spot and say, why are you not doing this?
Yes. And
give me a good why.
A really good example of this in action is when our friend Jackie Lassiter gave public comment at the very first Board of County Commissioners meeting this year and brought up the Herrera report, which is a report that was shared by Island County Marine Resources Committee about the unpermitted bulkheads on the shores of Island County. And she brought it up, and now it's on the public record. And Melanie Bacon, one of our commissioners, said, well, maybe we should schedule a work session around this.
Yeah.
But that is the best available. It's like the best available information we have right now about a very serious problem.
Yeah, and should have been incorporated or taken into account during the Shoreline Master Program review and update.
Yes, I don't know if it was out in time for that.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I think the publication timeline may not have matched up, unfortunately.
Which another issue is, as new best available science, is presented, is comes up, how does that get incorporated? Is there a place where you park it until the next review and update of that particular code? Or can you incorporate it? I mean, I can just hear the screams of, no, we can't go back and check every time a new report comes out. So how do you incorporate that new information?
Well, this was something that was going to be, I can't remember what it was around. Oh, Steve had mentioned this as it pertains to, I think, threatened species, and just having code, like in the county code, just having it in the code that it is, correlates with whatever the current document is or whatever the current list is.
Yes. Now I know what you're talking about. Yes, that rather than saying the report by Jones and Company dated 2002, rather it says, and any new information on this subject, words to that effect.
Right. So that it's already, you don't have to rewrite the code every time there's an update, but the source. You're like, the U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife says X, and we go by whatever they say in terms of, I don't know. I'm I'm not being specific, but I think that is, to go back to step 3 of doing your homework. What your homework is going to depend on your issue. But a place you can start is with legal notices in the newspaper. If you were looking at environmental stuff, and if you are trying to find out information that's related to, because you use that as it relates to permits in particular, and as it relates to like forest practices applications, right? What else?
So,
is there anything else? Permits?
So then doing your homework in part involves learning to read the garble that you're going to find in those legal notices. Mm-hmm. I'm one of the few people who can read the R number, that a parcel ID number, mm-hmm. and actually say, oh, that's north of Oak Harbor, or oh yeah, that's down by Clinton. Just because I've been doing it for so long that I know all the sections, townships, and ranges in Island County. I don't expect other people to do that. This is why you have all that stuff online. I mean, mm-hmm. you can look it up, but you need to know that that's what that number is and what information is embedded in that number.
Yes,
that kind of stuff.
Which takes time. It takes time with the material, and the level to which you're going to go with it is going to depend on what exactly it is you're trying to solve. Like for you look at every permit, you look at everything that goes when you can, you look through everything that's coming through the desk because you're looking for specific things, right? Any abnormalities, anything that is, a development related that may need to go through the SEPA process, anything that looks out of the ordinary. And you only know that it's ordinary or unordinary because you're doing it all the time.
Yeah. It's, other people can read that and it's meaningless, and I read it and they go, red flag.
But you're also scanning for a variety of issues at once, I would say.
This is true. And so, doing your homework, again, if you're focusing on now, I mean, the shoreline issue, boy, that's a big one. Mm-hmm. But there are certain permits that you would look at. Oh, I mean, I can't tell you how many shoreline development variances I've seen in the last year or two. It's like there are rules, and every blippin' permit application asks for a variance from the rules. So
Can you explain that
after
to me?
a while, pardon?
Can you explain to me what a variance is?
Oh, that's easy. The rule says you can't do that. Well, but I want to do that. So would you please give me a variance so I can do it?
Okay.
I mean, it's a get out of jail free card.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I would say that somewhere between 75 and 90% of the shoreline permits I'm seeing are for variances. So what does that say about our rules?
Yeah. I mean, what does it say about our rules? To that point, though, as a part of doing your homework, that's something that you notice in your homework, is that all these variances are being asked for. And so then step 4, show up. I would say that, like, if we're continuing to follow our rubric, or not rubric, our framework, that you might attend a public meeting and give a comment to that effect.
Yeah. I also, part of showing up in my instance is that I communicate with the planners. I mean,
yes.
There are individual planners assigned to each of these. Mm-hmm. And so I comment, and that's part of showing up is you've got usually between 14 and 30 days, depending on the kind of permit, to review and comment.
So you're commenting on each individual permit with the planner. And does that go on the public record when you do that?
Yes.
Okay.
And because the planners come and go so quickly, I tend to CC the planning director.
Okay.
So that he knows what's going on. And if I'm feeling particularly miffed about a proposal, I mean, there's one down at near Maxwellton Beach that has just fried my cookies. They've allowed subdivision of a 10-acre parcel into 2 5s. Both parcels are covered in wetlands, and they've allowed reasonable use exception to build these 2 houses each in the wetland.
Oh, no.
It's like, do we really build houses in the wetland?
Yeah, that seems like it's a violation of a lot of different things.
But it's reasonable use.
Which we haven't talked about yet. That we have to have a podcast episode about reasonable use.
Okay, so the quick one is the 5th Amendment to the Constitution. One part of it says, nor shall private property be taken for public use without due compensation.
Oh, so this is related to takings, which we have talked about. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that is the taking of private property. And Island County and a whole lot of other jurisdictions have agreed that rather than argue each individual case and drag it out in court about whether this is reasonable or unreasonable, or does the county have a right to do this or not, they stipulate that a single family dwelling and appurtenances will constitute reasonable use, even if you have to put the sucker on pontoons. Okay. And we keep getting these. I mean, this one down by Maxwellton Beach. I was having fits when I saw it, and it's approved. And
right, which this is like a different version of, because wetlands are different than, a shoreline area necessarily, but like the idea of where do private property rights, where do you draw the line? Because with ecosystem functioning, without wetlands, we have a huge issue, and yeah. And so it's, what'd you say?
Yeah. I mean, given particular location, you're talking about where Sweet Hill comes down to Maxwellton. And Sweet Hill is a very wet place, and there is water running off of that hill. And there is precious little you're going to be able to do to divert that water from the wetland that you're going to put those two houses in.
Yeah, and it will cause flooding in somebody else's basement, which happened to my parents' place in Langley when they lived there, because somebody had diverted a stream to build their house. And it ended up flooding a bunch of properties. To go back to step 4, showing up. So we say be there, be square. Showing up is the biggest part of success. And then this is the part where you participate. Attend public meetings, protests, and community events online or in person. Showing up to local meetings gives you a front row seat to local government policies and processes. I also feel like showing up to make people feel less anxiety around it can be a part of doing your homework. You can show up to meetings and you don't have to say anything. At first, like if you are, you just want to get to know it. Like people don't know these meetings. People are not, used to attending them. And I know that for me, sometimes, it's for work, but sometimes I'm just sitting on them and I'm listening, and I'm not, I'm just there to know what's being said.
Back in the 90s, I was such a bloody glutton for punishment. And back then we didn't have Zoom. So, I had to drive up to Coopville, and I did that. And for several years, the Planning Commission was meeting like once a week.
Wow.
And I was there every flipping week. And it got to the point where, many times I was the only member of the public at the Planning Commission meetings. And it got so that they kind of thought I was part of the Planning Commission, and they wouldn't start the meeting until I got there.
That's kind of cool, I have to say, Marianne.
I became a participant, there's 9 of them sitting up there, and I'm the one person in the audience. And it became a discussion, and my opinions and my ideas were incorporated and accepted. And it was a huge toll to be there every flipping week, I'll tell you. But it made a very big difference.
Yes.
And just, There's
no substitute for your... Huh? What'd you say?
Pardon?
No, you say...
Yeah,
what did you
among
say
other things, that being there are things that you would never know were going on, but it's like you hear someone bring it up and you go, really? What is that about? Wait a minute, let me look at this.
Right, which, a very different period in time, but the whole Not in Our Parks case, when you guys ended up going up against the Washington State Parks, was born out of you and Steve showing up to a meeting in Leavenworth about an entirely different issue. Yeah. So,
It's true.
Yeah. So showing up can have a huge impact, and lead you in different directions and help you form connections, both with people and with ideas and with whatever action is happening in the moment. And here in Island County, two places that we would recommend going to would be the county commissioners meetings, because our county commissioners are part of both the legislative and the executive branches of government, and they are the people who oversee our county. And we have 3 of them covering 3 different districts, and they hold regular meetings. In these meetings, there is an opportunity for public comment on any topic not on the agenda, followed by a meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. They also hold public hearings, and these provide an opportunity for the public to speak to the commissioners directly on particular topics of discussion. So that's, they'll put something up for public hearing, and then you can talk to them about that specific thing. And then only after hearing from the public may the commissioners take the final action of adopting substantive changes to legislation. So public hearings are legislation in action, right?
However, before the public hearing, there is the staff meeting, or whatever they're calling them, work sessions.
Work sessions, yeah.
And that's where things happen. Okay, They are not allowed to take official legislative action at the work session, But that's where they sit down with various department heads and say, what if we do this? No, I don't like that. How about if we change it this way? So that all of the details get worked out in the work session. And it's really frustrating to me because you can't comment in the work session.
Yeah,
but you can walk out of that work session and then you can send an email to all three commissioners and to the public works director or the planning director, whoever it was, and say, I really object to what you guys did on Wednesday because blah, blah, blah. And that then gets, thrown into the mix.
Okay. So you're saying that work sessions happen before public hearings, and
yes,
work sessions, the public is able to attend, but there is no public comment. So if you want to make comment, you can follow up in writing to the commissioners.
Yes.
Okay.
But the point being is that's where the sausage gets made, is in those work sessions, and that the public hearing is more pro forma than anything else. Okay. We did all the homework over here, and now we're showing you what we're going to do with that homework. Oh, you have some comments on that? Well, it's kind of late now.
But I will say that comment as a strategy, putting things on the public record, is good no matter what, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Because, it shows that the community and the public have commented on a particular thing, and whatever the outcome, there are different levers of action that can happen after legislation is done, right? That's like part of it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And one of the things is that, so, you attended the staff meeting or the work session, and your hair crawled right off your head and you sent in your comments, and they made a few changes, but not enough. And then there's the open public hearing where you reiterate that, gee, thanks, you made these two changes, but you know what, you ignored these other comments that I made, and you really need to deal with these. And then they go ahead and adopt the new ordinance. And then comes the part about what does that look like on the ground after they've adopted it? What changes are made in how things work? And that's the follow-up that you want to do, so that you can go back to them and say, well, you said that this change was going to make it that much easier to get a permit for a bulkhead. Well, what's happening? Suddenly we have 500 applications for bulkhead permits, following through on the legislative action that they took.
Another place that people can go besides the Board of County Commissioners meetings is also the County Planning Commission meetings, which we attend all of the time. And there are plenty of other commission meetings happening in different departments, right? Like, we focus on the Planning Commission because we're very interested in the Growth Management Act, the Comprehensive Plan, and all land use planning, right? Like, that's something that our organization cares about a lot. It's something that we've kind of, pinpointed as the meetings we want to show up for. But they're not the only meetings happening in Island County. There are public health meetings happening. There are, there are other other departments that you can also attend their meetings too, right?
Right. Yeah. And again, depends on your issue. In Island County, the public health department has a huge environmental component.
Yes.
And I suspect that there are a whole lot of meetings happening there and work sessions happening there that then go to either the Planning Commission or directly to the county commissioners. And a lot of those are very relevant to the work that we're all doing.
Yes. But for sake of time, if someone wanted to be up to date and kind of doing their homework on the legislative actions of our county, you could look at the Agenda Center for the Board of County Commissioners to get a sense of what's happening overall, right? Because
I hate their website, and I have to fight my way and arm wrestle through that darn thing. But yeah, you can go to the agenda center.
Yeah. And also follow, like I follow District 1 County Commissioner Melanie Bacon's newsletter too, which, I'm in her district. And so that's a way that I keep up to date on what's happening, which for somebody, if you have a specific issue you're researching or something you're looking at, just finding the ways to plug in so that you can kind of be scanning for your issue is part of the process. Yeah.
I mean, we've got one person whose total focus is Deer Lagoon and the dikes at Deer Lagoon. Mm-hmm. And I am so appreciative. That's his focus. And he does an enormous amount of homework on that focus. And I am so appreciative that he's taken that on.
Yeah, me too. And I think that's the thing is it takes the whole community to kind of spread out and cover different ground. You can't, as we said at the beginning, you can't focus on everything at once. Because then you'll focus on nothing.
I mean, maybe if you're AI, you can do this, but I'm not.
Yeah, you're not. Although I do call you the human computer to Marnie. So you may be a techno peasant, but you're also very good at synthesizing information and tracking and have a database in your brain. So that's, but the next step on our list, step 5, is making yourself heard, right? So we've defined a problem. We've done some work to understand the system. We've done some homework on the issue. We've shown up at meetings that are related to our issue, which we talked about the county, but as you're doing your homework, you'll likely discover different departments or commissions on any given level, right? Federal, state, county, municipality that are related to your issue. And that's where you should go. That's where you should be showing up. That's where you should be, participating. And then making yourself heard, which we talked about this in terms of formulating an ask for a given entity regarding your specific issue and amplifying it.
Yeah. Now, showing up and making yourself heard are kind of interconnected.
They are.
But showing up is part of making yourself heard because there are many ways to make yourself heard that don't involve, walking into a courthourse.
Right. And I think showing up is, to me, the way that, and we didn't clarify this in the document, and maybe I'll make amendments to this document, but that showing up in some ways is about speaking to specific power holders and being in a room with specific power holders, and making yourself heard is about that and the community, right? It's about giving comment. It's about sharing your specific ask and your opinion and your points on your issue. It's about, connecting with other people who share a similar passion for your issue. I'm thinking of Sound Defense Alliance, right? We have a very active community group on the island that specifically tackles the issue of growler noise. And they're,
I think that's hilarious. In the context of making yourself heard, I mean, it's very hard to make yourself heard. Growlers are flying.
Making yourself heard over the noise of the jets. Yes. But that's like the way that they find other people who are interested in what they're interested in is by amplifying their story. And you can do that, through social media. You can do that through the media, right? Like there was a big piece in the Seattle Times on it. They commissioned an entire report on the issue, right? Like when they were doing their homework, they did their homework, right? And
exactly. And make yourself heard, hanging that homework out there in front of everybody. Here's what we did. Here's what we found. And here's what we think needs to happen.
Right. And so here's what we think needs to happen. It comes out of doing that homework and understanding the problem.
Exactly. Yeah. And making yourself heard is, here's what we think needs to happen. And here's,
Yeah. And so we've said, comment. Once you've formulated a research-backed position on your issue, comment on everything you can in the appropriate venue. Remember to keep your comments short, sweet, and factual, and don't forget to include your ask. Share. Use social media platforms, email lists, and in-person networks to share talking points and opportunities for the public to speak out. Subscribe. Sign up to the various agency notice boards for your issue. Connect, articulate direct science-informed connections between your issue and other issues in your community. Like our ecosystems, problems are interconnected. Connect the dots, and that's another, in terms of making yourself heard, that's a different type of connection. But that's one that I think we're doing a lot now as it pertains to comprehensive planning in our particular consortium, talking about the intersection between affordable housing and ecosystem functioning with environmental justice, right? And how do you connect housing with the environment? It doesn't seem like on its face like they're interconnected, but they totally are, because the well-being of our community depends on it.
No, they're completely connected. It's like, don't even get me started on the housing issue, but it's been done wrong, from the time white folks showed up here.
Yes.
And once again, continuing to do it wrong, only more so, is not going to improve matters.
No, it won't. It won't improve the environment. It won't improve housing for people. So it's, we are, we need to be invested in good outcomes across the board around a variety of issues. But what does an ask look like? An ask is the action you propose to the legislative body responsible for the issue you're addressing. Example, language. You might ask, and this is language in specific policy language. You might ask for specific changes to the language of a piece of legislation, like changing all instances of should to shall, or from encourage to enforce, which we've maybe talked about before, but as it pertains to comprehensive planning, that's a big deal, right? Like, you should do something versus you shall do something. We're encouraging people to do something versus we're going to enforce it. And using language like enforce triggers budget considerations, right? Because then you have to have enforcement in order to do it, right? It's like, so to that point, there's programming. You might ask your commissioners to reorganize the Conservation Futures Program to encourage greater conservation in your area. You might ask the county to review and amend its roadside spray policies to reduce contamination of wildlife habitat and groundwater. So I think, like, we were giving kind of examples around this, but I think that an ask is how you formulate your ask and where you ask for it is going to depend on, I guess, like the scope of the ask and where you've kind of started from with it. Because I think it's gonna, I guess the ask is going to be determined by choosing your direction and deciding where you can make the biggest impact.
So it's not just choosing your direction, but who has the power or the authority?
Yes.
So, I mean, if you are asking to change legislation, that's the county commissioners, and their first thing will be take roadside spraying. They will immediately go to the public works director and say, how do you feel about this? What is this going to do to your budget and how many people you need, et cetera. So, where you make your ask, you have to present it in all of the different venues where it will make a difference. So it will.
Oh, sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, it will make a legislative difference, but that legislative difference means the county commissioners are going to have to talk with the public works director or the planning director or whatever. And, all the way down the line, what it is you're asking for, you need to ask for it in all of those venues. Right.
Which goes back to knowing the system, right? You have to know where to make the ask multiple times. And then also tactically, it's possible that you may have to change you may have to go through, come at the issue from different sides through different parts of the system in order to get the outcome you want.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's not just one track, right? It's like you have like a first try and you're like, does this work?
Well, and that means that you have to understand what each division, department, section, subset, et cetera, what is the limit? What is their mandate, and is what you're asking for within that mandate, and is it also in somebody else's mandate, and how do those overlap?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, are you asking the right person the right question? Are you asking the right person for whatever it is you want? And then step 6, measure success. Determine whether or not your actions have moved the needle, which we started talking about, to be like, when you're trying different ways, some things may be successful and some things may not, And so, what we said was, you rarely get 100% of what you want for a given outcome. Look at your ultimate goal and ask yourself, how big of a piece of that goal did you get? Yeah. And so I think that this is the point where, when we're using bulkheads as an example, I think we're in the process of defining this problem as it currently exists and then going through these steps. I don't think we're even close to measuring success in this iteration, but this is not the first time this issue has come up, right? Like this is an issue that has been ongoing for years, as far as I understand.
Yeah. No, time and again. And as sea level continues to rise, the issue becomes more and more pressing. Mm-hmm. And it gets bigger and badder. How many houses need to keep, fall into the sound? How many septic systems need to fail and contaminate the sound? Mm-hmm. At some point, and we don't know what the trigger is going to be, but at some point there's going to be a major trigger. And we keep pushing and pushing and pushing because we would prefer prevention to trying to pick up the pieces afterwards.
Which speaks to what we said in this step 2, which is prevention is progress. Often environmental activism is reactive, so simply preventing harm from happening is a major success.
Yes.
Often, I would say that this is the part, prevention is progress, that I think, as an organization, and part of my job is visualizing and illustrating the progress that has been made, because prevention is invisible. It's invisible work. It's difficult, but it's something that this was in the late 90s. We had a cartoonist around here, Art Boutillier, and he loved to do cartoons for us. Mm-hmm. And what I wanted him to do was a cartoon map of the county with all of the things that weren't there, because the prevention, as you say, is invisible. So no, there are no hotels on the beach. So his cartoon would have all these hotels on the beach. Mm-hmm. There are all of these things that didn't happen because of the work that we did. And at one point, the editor of the local paper said, "Oh, it must be so disappointing and discouraging that, you can't see any of the work that you did." And that's when I asked Art if he would do such a cartoon, all of the things that aren't here because of the work that we did. Yeah. I mean, the protection, right? It's like the protection's invisible. And when people come here to enjoy our island, they get to enjoy, a lot of the places that have been protected without knowing all of the meetings, decades of planning commission meetings that you were attending to make this happen, But anyway, so back to our steps. We're at step 7. So
show up.
Say that again.
Continue to show up is what it shows on my thing here. It's like, it's never over. Okay. Mm-hmm. Either you win big time and everybody goes home and has a party, and then you realize, oh no, there's more to do. Mm-hmm. Or you lose big time, you go home and you cry in your beer, and then you realize, no, we got to jump up and get back into it. I mean, there is no end to this. And we see this a million times. Organizations pop up around a specific issue and, they do what they do and maybe they make a big difference and maybe they don't. And then they all go home. Mm-hmm. No, that is not an option. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. I mean, it goes on. It's, you eat, you breathe, you sleep, you show up. I mean, it's just a continuing part.
Eat, breathe, sleep, show up. I think that's really good. I mean, that is what's necessary, right? And I think what's kind of amazing about building community around this stuff is that when you're not doing it alone, you can take a break if you need to, and it's still being taken care of. Or in your case, and Steve's case, not that you will ever stop, but now that Marnie and I are here, you don't have to carry it all by yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, you guys are making a huge difference. I mean, there are all the things that we said, well, one of these days we'll have the time. Oh, no, we don't have the time now. You guys are doing the stuff that one of these days was going to happen.
And we're really glad to do it. And we're hoping more people will join us so that we can do more stuff.
Yes. Yes. The more the merrier.
Yeah, the more the merrier. We need as much human power as possible right now. So, everybody's got to join in.
One of the things that happens is if enough people join in, it tips the balance so that instead of us being, pushing and pushing and pushing to get a little bit of change, that our point of view becomes the standard that by which everything gets measured. And hey, now we've got the whole net pen thing, okay? That we were fighting uphill, and Steve did that incredible report that people at the Department of Ecology took home, and instead of getting back in 60 days, it took them 2 years. And based on Steve's report, they acknowledged that, well, actually, yeah, net pens are bad, and we can't really force you to allow them. Okay, then the net pen, the blowout happened, and even Hillary France acknowledged, "Ooh, we got a problem here." And now we've got Alexandra Morton reporting that in the places where the net pens are no more, the salmon are coming back big time. And I sent that to you and you posted it. The point being that the whole narrative changed around net pens, that we were fighting and fighting and fighting. And now it's on the other side. Look at the good things because we decided we don't want net pens.
Yes.
It has shifted the entire discussion.
It shifted the entire discussion, but it took continued effort.
Absolutely.
That it took a long time for the conversation around net pens to change. And it took, Steve doing his homework, right? And presenting his homework to the right agency. And then that agency took a very long time to get back to him. And in that time, or around that time, there was a huge catastrophe that happened in 2017 when 250,000 non-native salmon were released from a net pen in the Puget Sound. And so, sometimes people, it's kind of like with climate right now, where we are seeing the results of climate change happening in front of our eyes. But scientists have been saying this for decades. They've been telling us the data. They've been telling us, that this is happening. And I think, some of us already believed it. But in order to truly change the narrative and to tip the scale, like you were saying, you have to have enough people on board who understand and will say yes. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes something devastating happening for that narrative to shift.
Like that net pen blowout, like the fires in Los Angeles.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but for us here, what we can do is we can continue to do our homework, show up, know our legislative systems, attend meetings, be in community with each other, share all of the information that we learn. And, for anybody who's interested in having a PDF copy of this framework for yourself and to share with others, it can be found on the WEEN website on our Act Now page. And it's called Making Positive Change. And I'm also going to include it in the show notes for this podcast.
I mean, I love the fact that you are working with people to train them so that more people will speak up. Yes. And if we get enough, we will tip this balance.
I believe that. I think we're both optimists, which is why we're still doing this work. Yep. You most of all, Marianne, you are an optimist. You and Steve are both optimists. I don't think people think that about you guys, but you're super optimistic.
We're pessimistic optimists.
Another man up in the pulpit in the state house, head of the table with the black pen, scratching egos, talking too loud, externalize every outcome, every warm gun, every profit, and kneeling down to the flashing numbers, the NASDAQ, the cold constructs, running backwards to just keep moving, just keep moving, just keep moving. Unlearning every lesson that our mothers tried to teach us.
This podcast is a production of the Whidbey Environmental Action Network and is made possible by our generous donors. Produced, edited, and mixed by me, Amanda Bullis. Special thanks to Marianne and Steve for their years of service through action and for lending their voices to this podcast. To WEEN's Executive Director, Marnie Jackson, and our board for their leadership. Special thanks to Whidbey musician Nathaniel Talbot for letting us use his track Intuition from the album Animal, available on Bandcamp.
Every day on your paycheck, a volume of confidence against the idea of your body being put into your own hands. So please don't hold it, please don't hold it, please don't hold it back. Unleash the power, the straight logic of compassion. What I need now ain't that old religion or the cold hard facts. Just need a woman's intuition, get us on track. Just need a woman's intuition, get us on track. Stepping out of the shadow of a false man's allegory, slowly erasing that old violence from the story, recoupling emotion, slow emotion to intelligence, granting the planters, healers, teachers, feelers a new relevance. What I need now